Снова здравствуйте, мои уважаемые зрители.
Hello again, my dear viewers in the yard on April 13th, and a review of the events that took place on the fronts of the Ukrainian war. Traditionally, we start from the north direction. Here on the border between Russia and Ukraine, these are the Bryansk, Kursk, Belgorod regions. There was one shelling recorded at the checkpoint. The Ukrainian side started shelling. The source of the shelling was suppressed, but in general, nothing fundamentally complicated, nothing fundamentally extraordinary happened. But what happened today north of Kharkov, it was, to some extent, indicative. The thing is, a few days ago, the Ukrainian armed forces announced with great fanfare that they had taken control of several settlements, including the village of Slatina, and it was supposedly a big victory for the armed forces of Ukraine. The fact is that these few villages are located in the so-called gray zone. No one has ever occupied them, and for this reason the Ukrainian troops who entered, and yesterday they left, because they came under artillery fire, and accordingly, they were forced to retreat further. But today, already Russian troops were advancing in this direction. And in the area of settlement of Dergachi, very serious artillery duels were noticed. Moreover, Ukrainian troops, Ukrainian artillery worked much more south than before. That is, indirectly, we can say that the Russian troops launched an offensive here. True, this is a local attack so far. It is impossible to say that some serious operation is planned here. But on the Donbass front, judging by the latest summary of the General Staff of the Ukrainian troops, which came out today at 18 o'clock, Russian troops have already completely completed the regrouping of their forces, and can start offensive operations at any moment. I repeat, this is the data of the General Staff of the Ukrainian Army, which marked the end of the regrouping of Russian troops. That is, it may well be, even tomorrow, that a large offensive operation of the Russian armed forces in the Donbass may begin. But in any case, in any of the next few days, I think it will still happen this week. And so, this question is also clear. What happens in other directions? Very interesting events took place a few days ago in the Zaporozhye region, between Stepnogorsk and Vasylyevka. I also noticed for the first time that the press service of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine announced that there had been a battle. That is, the local territorial defense entered the village and fell under the distribution of Russian troops. But the most remarkable thing here was not even that. Well, think about it. They came and got ahead and left. The most remarkable was in another. The press service of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine noted for the first time that the local population is surrendering its defenders. Such statements have not yet been made before. Now, with bitterness, the press service of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine declares that the local population is still handing them over, and, in fact, it really surrenders them because the Ukrainian warriors have already eaten into the local population too. Also, all the data suggests that in the next few days a serious massive attack from the Donbass and the Gorlovka region, in the Avdiivka region, and somewhere in the Kurakhovo region may begin. Everything indicates precisely that the Russian troops have indeed completed the preparatory actions for a major offensive. Meanwhile, in Mariupol unfold some kind of tragicomedy, because, as we know, yesterday the Russian armed forces announced that they had captured a large group of Ukrainian servicemen. Moreover, they presented an evidence base. They showed those soldiers. But the official version from Kiev is as follows. There was no capture of Ukrainian servicemen of the 36th Brigade, and in fact the 36th Brigade almost no longer exists as a combat unit. On the contrary, it was a successful operation. And the same 36th Brigade, it attacked the enemy, made its way to the location of Azovstal, and connected with the Azov Regiment. That is, the version is absolutely delusional. Nothing has been confirmed. And this was immediately noted, including by the Ukrainian military, which indignantly began to say, Lyashenko, why the hell are you hanging noodles for us? We know very well that we have a disaster in Mariupol. 1,000 soldiers were captured, and you are talking nonsense there, which does not fit on any globe. I emphasize that this is already being said by the Ukrainian military, in the Ukrainian public, who are well aware of what is really happening in Mariupol. And they are outraged. And this suggests that very soon problems may arise in Kiev for Zelensky and his small company. Because the so-called ultra-patriotic forces are very dissatisfied with what is happening now, not only in Mariupol, but also in the Donbass. And I want to remind you that in the last few reports, I emphasized that the British and American advisors, let's call them that, suggested that the headquarters of the Ukrainian troops pull the Ukrainian army out of the Donbass in order to save it. But Zelensky, by his order, left her in position, and thereby, according to British intelligence, dooms her to a complete defeat. If, after the disaster in Mariupol, I do not yet expect any serious internal upheavals within the official Kiev authorities, then when the operation to destroy the Ukrainian group in the Donbass is completed, that's when very serious events can happen in Kiev. I do not exclude the option that Mr. Zelensky will pay not only with his power, but also with his life. This is approximately what I can say today, April 13, 2022. The next material should be out tomorrow. Goodbye.
Следующий материал должен выйти завтра утром. До свидания.